Mr. Atherton, do you think we should go ahead and get started?
I think we should. We have a lot to cover.
Okay, great. Okay. Help me out here. Do we move to open the meeting, or do I read my statement first?
Normally you just say we're going to start the meeting and then we approve the agenda and then just go through
That's
it.
right. That's right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our April community engagement meeting. I appreciate everyone for being here. And we have some special guests this morning. Functions as a place for planning how we as a board and engaging our community. This meeting also serves to be a safe space for hearing where we have been weak or inadequate in these efforts, and hold a safe space for conversations regarding our community burdens. It can be, therefore, I like to remind myself and members to sit with or acknowledge uncomfortable moments as they present themselves, and to avoid making dismissive comments of the feedback we receive. Okay, and so I'll take the motion to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve.
And I will say all in favor.
Aye. Aye. Carrie, you may have to turn off your video. You're really, really choppy.
Okay. I thought I had it. Sorry.
Much better.
Okay.
Much.
We've approved the agenda. Is that better, Will?
Yes, much better.
And still sound glitchy on my end, so I hope this clears up. Okay, so I don't think Ms. Moore is here yet. So did you have a chance to review the minutes?
I did. So motion to approve the minutes.
Okay. Second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. I feel I have to change my internet connection again shortly. I'm going to pause you, Dr. Keeling, and see how I do just listening for with our first item, which is our anti-racism reflection exercise.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, I really want to commend the board for the work that you all are doing to engage in the anti-racism reflections and just everything around equity. I don't know of maybe any other school board that as an entire group is really working towards this effort. So I really wanted to say that I appreciate you all for that. So you had some homework in our virtual academy here, and it was to watch a short documentary called Unseen Tears. So the first thing I want to do is to just pause briefly and to hear any reflections that you all had as you watched the film. So I'll give you a second to see if there's anyone that would just like to share out before we engage in our homework reflection.
I'll be happy to share. I had no idea about Native American boarding schools, I'm sorry to say, and was really moved by the film, and it really got me thinking a lot about, the sort of comparisons between our school district and how it started and where we're at, and kind of practices that are probably left over from times where we were asking folks to assimilate. I mean, it's just, there's a lot there, a lot to unpack and a lot to continue thinking about, but it was very thought provoking and moving for me. And I'm just really glad to have had the opportunity to see it.
Ms. Mackenzie. And I want to apologize for the participants who maybe are unaware. And I sent out to staff to watch the film as well if they were going to join for the pre-work. But for those who may not have had the opportunity, it's like about a 30-minute video, and it is a documentary in first person. The Native Americans who went to these Indian boarding schools where they're removed from their family and sent away to school. And just like what that was like for them while they were there, and what those effects are for them even today, how that affected their own children and how they parented. And so that's the video that the board is talking about. And anyone else who's on the call who watched the video, it's open to all of us. It's not just limited to the board. I think the board wants everyone to participate if you want to. Mr. Atherton, were you about to speak?
No, I was just going to say, you know, it's films like these that, you know, really put perspective in things that just aren't discussed, you know, or unknown. And until you hear it, you know, like you said, first person, that's when you really have to reflect on just not able to comprehend some of the stuff that was happening.
I'll say that I really appreciated the video, and I've only known about boarding schools for about 2 years, and I actually I've listened to some podcasts about boarding schools that were in Canada, and I really didn't know about American in the United States, the similar boarding schools that were here. And so that documentary was really helpful, and I just feel like it's, you know, it's really disturbing to have grown up being aware that people were taken from their communities really pretty violently. And so I appreciate the focus on this morning.
Did anyone else want to share?
Yeah, I would just chime in and really just echo everything that the board has said. I remain troubled by it, and but also grateful for the opportunity to view it, as it was very informative. And you know, my mind went to, you know, how do we get more of our staff and our community to also be informed, and then what are our next steps in terms of how do we help to address some of the vestiges from those experiences. So thank you for the opportunity. Knowledge is power.
Thank you, Dr. Felder. So as part of your homework, there was a reflection question. And that question is, what were the perceptions and messages about Native American people, students, schools that you noticed or heard as you watched the video? Who would like to share the perceptions that they captured and messages that they captured?
Can you repeat the question, Dr. Keeling? I'm so sorry.
Sure. It was, as you watched the film, what were the perceptions about Native American people and students that you noticed or heard, as well as what messages about Native American people and students in schools that you noticed or heard?
I'll start off. it really, started off with the belief that they were savages, savage born, and that they needed civilized language and habits, and you've got to conform, be like us. And it just the perception that being Native American, these all must be true, right? Just basically looking at someone and saying you're stereotyped, this must be you, you've got to conform, we're going to, almost like we're going to help you. So
kind of along those lines, there was this underlying message of a different culture is, one is inadequate to another, and so one is superior. And so that's sort of right there, but the methods, the method disturbing, including like the changing of the hairstyle, the cutting of the hair. I mean, it's not hard to see the kind of tools of like power and abuse, this of aiding a people to sort of put them in a submissive posture, and blaming, the sort of the mind games of, if you think you're being abused, it's because you're bad, and if you talk about it, worse thing will happen. So it's a quick transition from putting a sense of superiority into one culture, and then all those tools of control coming out.
Yeah, I was really taken with the saviorism also, and was struck by the theme of, white people thinking that Native Americans needed to assimilate to be better, but the result was really that so much trauma was inflicted upon these generations of people that it really is what has caused a lot of generational harm and trauma and alcoholism and all sorts of things. And so that really stood out to me.
Good morning. I do want to, again, echoing other members who shared, to just thank this opportunity, thank the team for this opportunity to learn and share. It was a pretty traumatic morning watching that video. I wonder, and this isn't just with how our Native Americans have been treated, but how just white people in general, but in this morning in particular, because we are focusing on our Native American family, I do question, is it saviorism? Because what I took away, and I often keep coming back to this when we talk about what's been happening to our different groups of people, other than our white people and some white people in this country, is it saviorism or is it fear? Is it fear by our white people that they see another group of people that are different than them? And because of this fear of this difference, is it then that instead of trying to learn about people that are different, that they feel that they have to put upon other groups of people this intentional dominance that they feel they have to enforce to address their fear of the difference? Maybe their fear is that maybe they're not as good as these other people. maybe that these other groups of people might actually be of some benefit to them beyond being taken over. I think sometimes it's too kind to say that they were trying to be saviors. I just feel like it's intentional dominance. And when you watch that video and, you know, certain things like, well, they placed the superintendent over, and, you know, he was like from the prison, like, you think that was by chance that this person ran prisons before they came to run schools for our Native American children? That was intentional. There was intention behind this. And this is what I need our white neighbors to understand. And this is the struggle that I have always experienced and been working through this kind of work my whole adult career. We need our white neighbors to understand what we are talking about when we're talking about institutionalized racism. This is a perfect example of that it's intentional. This was it was architecturalized. It was created to do exactly what it did. And we demolished a whole group of people in this country. While we as individuals did not partake in that because that was of the past, we weren't even alive. But we cannot be blind. We cannot play ignorant. We can no longer stay silent. This was intentional dominance, and it is every single time. And when it is one time and then they get caught and we figure it out, like, they found out what we're doing. Now let's switch it up and make it, switch it up so it looks like we're saving again. When in reality, we just put a different mask on it. When I cry, it's usually because I'm so angry. I'm so angry that we as human beings would do this to each other over and over and over again. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's just, and I'm sorry to our Native American families that we did this to you and that we continue to do this to you. Okay, I'm sorry. We just have to call it out like what it is and stop being, beating around the bush and trying to be all nice about it. No, these are some awful things that were done. And we can't keep turning a blind eye and say, oh, that was the past. And why is it that we're just finding out? I've known about what's happened. And growing up in Duluth, Minnesota, with our different tribes and connecting with them there, I've known what's been done to them. But it's like, it's just not right. And it's happening to too many groups of people. It's continuing to happen. And we have to stop it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dawson. And you speaking reminds me, I want to apologize to the group because I should have opened with our courageous conversation protocol and to say that those agreements, when we come into these spaces, are to, number one, stay engaged. And when we find ourselves disengaging, that right there is the point, right? So if anyone started to feel themselves disconnect from what Dr. Dawson was saying, not want to deal with it, want to do other things, want to like shut it out, like that right there, that is your point of breaking through. Because you have to grab that and say, why do I not want to listen to what she's saying? Why do I right now want to disconnect from what she's saying? Because that's the point where we can work through it. Our second agreement is to speak your truth. And that's what Dr. Dawson just was doing, right? She's just speaking her truth. We're going to get ready to hear Ms. Stewart speak her truth as someone who identifies with this group that we're talking about and this video that we just watched. The third is to experience discomfort. Over the course of the next 3 months as you all do these sessions, you will probably feel uncomfortable. You may feel, oh, they're trying to blame white people. They're trying to blame me. You may feel guilty. You may feel angry. Just sit in that and work through it. That's how we get the breakthroughs, right? When we just say, oh, I'm angry, oh, this is blame, and I want to shut down. And no, we don't want you to do that. We want to call it in, and we want to work through this process. Because what we don't often talk about is in this trauma that happens for people of color, for our Native Americans that we're hearing about, for our Black, for our Latinos, for all of the different students who education has been so violent for. There is also trauma in that for white people as well. Because what must it be like as a child to have people telling you this about other people? What does that do to you? What does it do to you when your family takes you to watch a lynching and you're 5? There's trauma in that for you as well. So this work is about healing people of color, but it's also about healing white people, right? And us all coming together and breaking through all of these different things. And that last agreement is to expect and accept non-closure. So one of Dr. Felder's points was, so what do we do, right? We want to jump to, what are we going to do about it? And we can make some strides and we can do some things, but this is a journey. It is a process. No one reaches anti-racism. I'm not going to die completely an anti-racist, right? It is a constant journey that we are going through. And I'm just, again, grateful that we're taking the time for us to go through this together. Did anyone else want to share any perceptions or messages that they received?
I just wanted to say really quickly how much I appreciate what Dr. Dawson just shared with us. I've never thought of white saviorism as a gift-wrapped form of white terrorism, but I see it so clearly now she said that. And it was like a kind of a breakthrough moment for me. So I just wanted to share that I had experienced that here.
Any other messages, perceptions that you picked up?
I don't know where I heard these messages. It was similarly to sometimes hearing Black communities blamed for, you know, like not having same levels of achievement or whatever events, you know, as if it was aimed on. And I remember hearing some of these things and thinking that doesn't make sense. There's something behind that, you know, there's something else really going on there at some point, and I don't remember when it was because I can't point it to my family or anything, but knowing that there were some like alcoholism problems that plagued Native American communities, and just always that sense of it being blamed on the community itself and not being, you know, there's such a shortage of just that willingness to know the truth about, you know, the systems of white supremacy in our country and how ingrained they are in everything. But it was always that like twist where what white supremacy has done to a group of people then gets blamed on the group of people without the cause being identified. And so at some point that crept into my brain in a general way, but I can't, that's all I can say about that, about how.
Thank you, Ms. Doyle.
If I could share, and I have to apologize because I didn't watch the video. I haven't had a chance to. I intend to. I really apologize for that. Yesterday was Yom HaShoah, and I don't know if you know, Yom HaShoah is Holocaust Remembrance Day. Around the world, in Israel, they actually stopped the entire country for 2 minutes, run sirens, and read names. And the purpose of the work is to move past categories to begin to humanize these experiences. And how do we move to, is there a way to move to, these are individual people, you know, and I may be a white Jewish woman, you know, which describes my experience and the trauma that I bring to this, you know, which is different from someone who is Native American or someone who's Black. But, and we have different cultural identities and different customs and different ways of being, you know, and my mother, and if you all want, I'll invite you. I'll be speaking at CW Stanford in a couple weeks on my mother's experience at Auschwitz, you know, but my mother would say that I chose to live my life as a survivor, not as a victim, you know, and so is there a way to move this conversation? I think that's where the resilience work comes in, but is there a way to move this? And I'm not trying to denigrate the experience because I'm doing my own work on my own traumas. I get it. But I get uncomfortable when we classify anybody based on their identity, because it makes a presumption about them, you know, whether they're, you know, and I realize that we do stupid things because of our cultural identities, but I know if I talk to people in a certain way, they'll immediately, you know, react. So, and I don't know how to say that. I'm done. I'm just sharing that.
Thank you, Ms. Hauser. And I think, like, you make a good point about what you said with your mom and her resilience and what either she needed to tell herself or what in the Jewish culture they needed to tell themselves to get through that. But one of the things to that, though, is we have to allow people in their identity and in their trauma to work through that however they need to. Like, if that worked for your mom and it works for the Jewish community, that mantra, that mindset, then that's what works for your mom and the Jewish community. What works for Native Americans and what they need to say to themselves and what we as Black people need to say to ourselves, that's part of it, right? I don't try to project that onto anyone else and say what you need to do to help you get through your trauma as an individual and as a community. I mean, I think that's part of what Ms. Stewart's going to talk about over these next 3 months, is how Native Americans are working through their trauma. And we'll see that play out in a number of things. One of which, as we discussed, is why we don't see many Native American students identified in Orange County schools when we're sitting surrounded in what was Native American land. There's a reason for this, right? And so we just don't want to project onto people anything that we want to see them do. And we just want to, like, really learn to just listen and accept and take that in, and to really just have the time to understand where they're coming from and what they've been through. So I know my time is out. The last question I will just ask is, all of these perceptions and messages that we've all just talked about and seen, my last question for you all is, where did those perceptions and messages go?
Well, I would just say they haven't gone anywhere. They're here, still here, alive and well. They've not gone anywhere.
If I were in school and I was like be passing out candy, I would like throw you a candy bar right now, Dr. Felder. that was the answer. That's one of my little things when I would come into classrooms, get these things right. I'm throwing out candy, let's go. But that's just it, right? They didn't go anywhere. They're still here. We're still working through that. And I think that's some of what Ms. Stewart's going to be talking to us about. So the last thing I would say to everyone is I would also recommend that everyone watch the movie Stolen Education. It's on Amazon Prime, and it's about segregated schools for Mexican Americans in California. And one of the things that happened to them is that they had to repeat the first grade 3 times. And they called it like beginner, then lower first grade, and then higher first grade, something to that effect. And it ended up that like 80% of Chicano students dropped out. And there are a couple of other like clips and films that I can share within the board weekly update so that you can begin to see like the experience for different groups as they have gone through education in America. And there's also I Am Smart Too. I think some of us have seen that, and it's about Chapel Hill Carborough. And when you listen to some of the messaging in that, like you'll hear the students make the connection between history and the present, right? And so I'm gonna stop there. We'll move on because I want to make sure that we get to the rest of what we have today. Thank you for allowing me to have this time with you all.
Thank you, Dr. Keeling.
Thank you, Dr. Keeling, for leading us as always. The next item on our agenda is the Flamboyan Fellowship update, Dr. Keeling, and I believe Ms. Stowe isn't able to be with us this morning, so you and Dr. Dawson.
Yes, I think Dr. Dawson, if she is available, is going to take the lead on this.
Sure, I can do that. Just trying to picture so I can see you. Instead of looking that way, I'm going to look at you. So yes, we continue to do our work. The team, we are continuing to identify the families and the community members that are unheard and that we're trying to give voice to and to better understand and hear their perspective. So of course, if anyone has people or groups that you could connect us with, we would be more than appreciative of that as we continue to hold our individual as well as group interview sessions with the different community members. And what we are preparing for is in May, we will be convening with the other districts and organizations that have been is part of this cohort 3 fellowship, and we will be presenting to them our findings from our conversations with our community members and kind of giving a landscape perspective of Orange County and Orange County schools as a result of those conversations. And so we're in that in the process of preparing for that. And of course, as we put those pieces together, we'd be more than happy to come back and share with the team our findings. And then what we're also doing as part of this work, we're connecting it to the preparation of our strategic plan. And as that comes together, we will look at how this work will be weaved into that as part of one of our priorities. So we look forward to that as well. So.
Yeah, one thing I will add to what Dr. Dawson said, I think for me, what's really exciting is we're going out and we're speaking to different family groups. And it's not just families of color that we're speaking to. Like we're going to be speaking to white parents and different socioeconomics, like all of this. And what we're going to do is like this comparative analysis of what is the different experiences as students, for students and parents in Orange County schools. I think that's going to be so fascinating when we can see what everyone's different experiences look like and bring that together as part of our landscape. I don't know if did I miss anything else, Dr. Dawson, with that?
Nope, I think you got it. And it again, we're trying to give voice to the unheard, right? Because that's so important. And we know we have families in our community that feel unheard, and it's very important that we are more than words, that we are just more than words. And so we are trying to be very intentional about our actions behind our words, and to reach out. So, but we need help, because we need help in, knowing and connecting to the family. So if anyone knows of any individual or groups, please, feel free to forward or reach out to either Dr. Keeling. I was combining all your names together, Dr. Keeling or myself, or and we'd be more than happy to do our part to go to them. Because so often we expect them to come to us, and we need to go to them. So Ms. Doyle, I think that wraps up our update.
That's great. Do any board members have questions for Dr. Dawson or Dr. Keeling about the Flamboyan Fellows, the interviews and the landscape analysis? I heard a good amount about that last month too.
Nope, just looking forward to what the results are of it.
I'm assuming we're happy to share individuals or groups that we're afraid aren't heard, but I'm imagining you all are doing a thorough job looking for all of those people. And so you're doing that, like, are you identifying with like school leadership? I'm trying to imagine how you have, school leadership and Miss Bluffco reaching to. I'm sure you're just doing a whole like patchwork of ways to make sure every corner is covered. That's pretty exciting in and of itself.
Right, like one of the things is to get referrals from people who we are meeting with. So like when we meet with the community partners, we're asking them to refer the next group of people for us to meet with. When we meet with that group, we ask them to refer the next group of people. So that's like kind of tapping into who we know to see if they know other people for us to talk to.
Well, if we don't have further questions, if Ms. Stewart would like to start early, we can move on and pass the mic to Ms. Stewart. Dr. Keeling, I think, is going to introduce Ms. Stewart as well. Are we ready to move ahead, everybody? Does that sound good, Will?
Yes.
So Ms. Doyle, I thought you were going to read your bio that you have written up.
Do you want me to do that?
Yeah, it was really good.
Okay. Let me, I'm always bad at like juggling my screens here. Let me just see. 1 second.
Ms. Doyle, did you need the screen share?
Oh, no, that's okay. I'm just just clicking around here. Hold on a second. Okay. I got it. Okay. Make sure I'm not muted here. All right. So I would like to welcome to our Community Engagement Committee, Ms. Kara Stewart. She is of Saponi heritage, is a grades 3 to 5 literacy specialist at Eflin Cheeks Global Elementary School. Ms. Stewart has taught in Orange County schools for 23 years. She also has served several terms on North Carolina's Advisory Council on Indian Education, including on the Professional Development Committee. And she has also served on her own tribal council. She and her daughter together have developed related curricula and have presented in several North Carolina school districts. But this is the first time that she's presenting to our school district, her own school district. Ms. Stewart has also written several articles published in the School Library Journal about instructional strategies and books that affirm the experiences of Native American students. And so we welcome her and look forward to learning from her today. Welcome, Ms. Stewart.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I love that you mentioned my daughter. That made me smile big time. So good morning, everyone. I really am delighted to be here, and I'm deeply appreciative to Ms. Doyle and Dr. Keeling for reaching out to me and for the board's interest in North Carolina tribes. This is my 23rd year teaching. I did start my teaching career in Orange County schools at New Hope under Dr. Chapman and the leadership of Dr. Bridges. And I will tell you, it was a wonderful way to start a teaching career. And I feel like I've come full circle coming back to Orange County schools in 2015. I'm currently a literacy interventionist at Athlon Cheeks. I was formerly last year and the years prior to that a 3-5 literacy coach there. I've been a literacy coach in Chapel Hill, Carborough City schools, in Wake County schools, reading specialist and interventionist all my career. And I am Saponi. So before I get into all the content that I have for you, I'm going to share my screen with you. We think I will. I was coached on this morning, so let's see if I can follow directions here. Okay. Somebody let me know. It's loading right now. Let me know, somebody, when you can see my screen.
We can see it.
Awesome. Okay, I did it. Yay! And Mr. Atherton, out to you, because I remember, I don't know if you remember, you came by Athlon Cheeks last year and you spoke to me and the K2 coach, and I was like, yes, somebody's here.
Yes, I do remember.
Thank you for that. Yeah, thank you for that. Before we get started, I do want to say, in response to Ms. Hauser's comment about looking for ways to move beyond being the victim, that is a really important thought. And I think sometimes we get, being a victim has become part of the stereotypes about Native people. Oh, the poor Indians, oh, we should feel so bad for them. And I'll tell you, my tribe, we're done with that. We are tired of being viewed as victims. We prefer that you know the facts. We prefer that you listen and are open to learning the facts. And there's a big difference between listening and being open to learning the facts, and then support us in the ways we feel like would benefit us and our children and our families, and increase student achievement. So my tribe is tired of being perceived as the victim. So when I give you a bunch of content, and there is a lot of content this morning, and I'm going to be talking quickly, I really hope it's in that sense that, and I really think from everything I've heard that it will be, that you're open to learning the facts. I think it's so important that people said that they only recently learned about Indian boarding schools. That surprises me, but maybe it shouldn't. And so maybe a lot of what I'm going to present today is something that's new to you and new learning. So that's the way I would like to approach this, is not as victims, but being, here's the facts. So let's learn them, and what can we do about that? So I am Saponi. This photograph, this is our Saponi Tribal Center. And I put a quote up there that I think is particularly relevant. And this was Chief Sitting Bull, in case you don't know, but this is his real name. And before we start, I'd like to tell you a little bit about my lens that I see things through so that you can kind of interpret what I'm saying to you, knowing that, yep, so this is the way Kara sees things. First of all, I see things with an overall sense of literacy in mind. Because I've been a literacy specialist for so long, because I am a writer, I interpret things through the lens of literacy. And when I do that, I've also been fighting for accurate representation with a particular focus on natives in kid lit, children's literature. So been fighting for accurate representation in the books that are in schools, in books that are newly published and are not accurate, in all of those things. So the accurate representation to me is key to everyone learning correct information. And in our case, many things need to be unlearned, as you all pointed out so eloquently. Many things need to be unlearned that are not accurate and give you the accurate information. So to me, that accurate information plus educating the teachers, which is what I've been doing for decades, that my hope is that that will lead to cultural knowledge about us. It will lead to a stronger sense of identity for our families and for our children. It is cultural validation for us, and I think a lot of times that is a part that's left out. And when we have all these things working together, our children certainly can, and the hope is will, be more well-balanced and whole human beings. So Ms. Doyle said many of these things. I've been on the Saponi Tribal Council. That is an elected position. I've served 3 terms on the North Carolina State Advisory Council on Indian Education. That's a position that your tribe appoints you to. The Commission of Indian Affairs and the state superintendent then meet and decide whether or not, yes, they will actually appoint you. So I'm going to be talking pretty quickly because we do have a lot of content to cover. And I would invite you to write down any questions you have, and I'm hoping to leave time for them at the end. I'm going to be moving rapidly through the slides, but I do want to let you know that this slide deck is going to be made available to you so that when there are links on there or things you want to look more closely at, you'll be able to go back and have them right there for you. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm actually going to turn off my camera because I'm way out in kind of rural Person County. I'm just across the Orange County line, and I don't have good internet. Sometimes it goes in and out. So I'm going to turn off my camera if I can, in the interest of
Just
more broadband.
you know, Ms. Stewart, so far your audio is really good, just so you know.
Oh, is
That's
it
fine
great?
if you turn off your camera. Yeah.
Well, I can't figure out how to, so belay that order. Can't figure out how to, so we'll hope it stays good. I did restart it this morning. One thing I wanted to let you all know, when we're talking about American Indians in North Carolina, American Indian is the official legal term in North Carolina. I'm not sure how that happened, but that's a legislative thing. So that's why all the organizations like State Advisory Council on Indian Education, the Commission of Indian Affairs, the North Carolina Museum of History, all these organizations, that's why they say American Indian in this state. You'll also hear tribes like Native American, Native, Indigenous, Indian. To me and to the majority of the Native people that I know, I don't really care what you use. It's fine. Either way is fine. Neither is offensive to me personally, and for most Native people I know. There are some, here's my literacy head again, there are some grammatical differences. So you notice that I just said for most Native people that I know. So that's the use of that term. I wouldn't really say for most American Indian people that I know. It's like a grammatical thing, but there's no difference. You can use any term and it's not really going to be offensive. And if it is offensive to a person, I would hope that they would speak up, but I don't know any people it's offensive to. I also wanted to start off by letting you know that the tribal location in North Carolina, it depends on the time period. So when you're looking at, for instance, the boarding schools going back in history, and as somebody pointed out, Minnesota, you would hear about them, Arizona, New Mexico, you would hear about them. People don't hear as much about the ones on the East Coast. Carlisle Indian School was a famous one in Pennsylvania near Harrisburg. So North Carolina and Virginia in particular, but the Southeast, East Coast, we have been in contact with colonizers the longest of anyone in the United States because of the geography of the United States. So Germans, Vikings, people from Spain, England, they landed here on the East Coast. They didn't land in California, they landed here. So from the 1600s, 1500s, 1400s on, we've had contact with colonizers since then. So a lot of things that seem to be true about Midwest and Western tribes, that's a little different than here. And that's also very different from North Carolina and Virginia. So this is a map that was provided by, it was in a 1983 booklet from the North Carolina Commission of Indian Affairs that they put out and sent out to interested people. You'll notice the spelling of names of tribes is different because when you go back to firsthand historical documents, they spell it any way they can figure out how to do it. You know, they weren't exactly concerned about spelling. So you'll see my tribe is here. And this says at the time of European contact. So for us, the earliest recorded would be about 1607. Now we know it went before that. And then you'll see the tribes like the Tutelo, the Occaneechi, the Meherrin. And you know, you'll notice the Occaneechi are here. Well, all of us have moved around, you know, whether we move for political reasons with the colonizers or political reasons with other tribes, which I'll show you in just a second, or whether we moved around, you know, because we had farmland we liked better someplace else. All of these tribes moved all over Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina. So it's not like you can say, oh, here, they've been here forever. We've been where we are now since a certain time period, but not always. So I just wanted to show you. And also, you know, this gets really confusing because tribes like the Sugaree, the Waxhaw, the Sissepahaw, they are not current tribes. There aren't any more of them. So when teachers go onto Encypedia and they see a map like this, it's very confusing because they have no way to tell the difference between who are contemporary tribes and their current, and we should be engaged with them and we should be, you know, pulling information from their official tribal websites, and who doesn't exist anymore. So I just wanted to point out the changing in location. North Carolina does have the highest American Indian population of any state east of the Mississippi. We currently have 8 state recognized tribes. We have 1 that is also federally recognized, fully federally recognized, and that's the Eastern Band of Cherokee. We have 1 tribe with limited federal recognition, that's the Lumbee, and we have 4 urban Indian organizations. The federal and state recognition, it's more than just culture. It's more than just validation. We do have a government to government relationship with the states of North Carolina and Virginia. Federally recognized tribes have a federal to federal relationship. We do have our own constitutions, our policies. We have governing bodies and structures and procedures. We have our own flags. So that's important to know. And federally recognized tribes like the Eastern Band, they're sovereign. They have their own police. They have their own laws. That doesn't mean they don't follow the overarching laws of the state, but they have their own, as well as judicial systems. When I was saying about the Indians moving around from Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina and going back and forth, There are 3 major linguistic groups of North Carolina Indians, and my tribe, the Saponi, are Siouan, and then you can see the others there. And if we, a way to think of it, a way that I explain this to 4th and 5th graders when I do presentations there is that, oh, and by the way, I just wanted to let you know too, I said to Ms. Doyle, don't you think maybe should the board know about, like, shouldn't they have at least as much information as I give 4th and 5th graders? And she was like, huh, but yeah. So this is what I teach when I go into the classrooms. So the Siouan tribes, it's almost like, you know, cousin tribes, the languages, the traditions, the customs, they would be more similar to each other. Iroquoian tribes, cousin tribes. Algonquian, they don't have anybody here, but yes, they do. So yeah, so that's the historical root of the tribes. And here's a map just to orient you as to where and who our tribes are. So here in blue, of course, in orange and Alamance, we see the Occaneechi currently. My tribe, the Saponi, is up here, and it's important to point out this is only a map of North Carolina. We are the only tribe who is also in Virginia. We were here before the state lines were drawn. One of our own people actually helped to draw the state line. His name was Ned Bearskin, actually, in 1728. He was part of the survey party that went with William Byrd as he was directed from the Raleigh governor at that time to draw the dividing line between Virginia and North Carolina. So one of our people actually helped draw that line, but our people had been back and forth and traveling that area since then. Halawa Saponi are in Halifax and Warren. That's where they get the name Halawa. The Meherrin are in Hereford County. The Coharie are down in Sampson and Harnett counties and going around south. The Waccamaw are in Bladen and Columbus counties. The Lumbee, which most people have heard of from North Carolina, the Lumbee and the Cherokee. The Lumbee are down here in Robinson, Hoke, and Scotland counties. And then, of course, we've got the Eastern Band of Cherokee in Graham, Jackson, and Swain. So all this means is currently. And it means currently homelands. You know, of course, you can find a Cherokee person living, you know, in Sampson County. You could find a Hopi person living in Durham. So that's why we have the Indian urban organizations. These are the ones in gray. There's 4 of them, and you can see them down here right under the map. We've got the Triangle Native American Society in Raleigh, Metrolina in Charlotte, Guilford Native in Greensboro, and Cumberland County in Fayetteville. And the purpose of those is to be a service organization for any Indian who lives locally, and it's service and community. It is so important for Native people to have community. So of course, if there's and by the way, only people from North Carolina say Cherokee when they're talking about Eastern Band. We think of this as the only Cherokee, but when you're talking on a national level, if you say Cherokee, they think Oklahoma. So that's the bigger Cherokee tribe. So if there is an Oklahoma Cherokee person or a Hopi person or a Pueblo person, and they happen to live in Raleigh, they're going to be very lonely for Indian community. And so they could go to the Triangle Native American Society and join that, and they would get that sense of service and community. So that's where our tribes are currently. And I wanted to start, I was going through the tribes, and I was thinking, how could I present this to you in the most clear manner? And I decided that I would use my own tribe, the Saponi, because number one, I know the most about them. And because when you're thinking about the North Carolina tribes, there are some similarities. Now, of course, there are specific differences, but we were all agricultural based tribes. We all have initiatives, different, but we all have different initiatives that we want the public to know about. We all have our own government. We all have our own sense of community. So while I'm going through the Saponi, I want you to understand and realize that all these things also apply to the other tribes in North Carolina. We also all have our own insignia. And if you look up at the top right, that is our Saponi insignia. So we call ourselves, our community, the location is the High Plains community. We have about seven families, 7 clans, 1,000 members, and our initiatives, we do economic development initiatives. We have healthy living initiatives. We do 5K and heritage camp to teach our youth about their heritage and continue some certain aspects of that. When I go through the other slides, you'll see that in the on the slide, usually in the top right, I've put every tribe's insignia. The insignias are made up of things that are important to that tribe, for maybe historical reasons, maybe for subsistence reasons, but that insignia has a particular meaning to that tribe. So you'll see that. And I've also put at the bottom left of the slides, the official tribal website, so that you can go to those to look to see more information if you are interested in that. So so here's our tribal government. We do have a chief. This is him up here in the white shirt and the khaki pants. We have a chairperson, we have an executive committee, and we have an executive director. And then we have representatives from, 1 representative is elected from each of the 7 clans or families. And this is actually the exact same way that it was structured in the 1600s. That wasn't intentional. I think we carry with us far more of our history than we realize we do, but that's the way we set it up over and over and over. And it wasn't until we went back to the firsthand accounts, the John Lawson Journal, things like that, that we realized, wait a minute, they're talking about 12 people on the council just like we have now. And then we researched more and found out, actually, that's a holdover from the 1600s, but it still works. Our flag has our insignia on it. The 7 stars at the top represent our 7 families watched over by God. The 3 arrowheads are a historical Saponi trading symbol with the colonists. In the times of Fort Christiana, which was 1714 to 1718, the colonists required all the tribes to come up with a symbol so that they would recognize who they were and be able to recognize friendly tribes versus non-friendly tribes. And our symbol was the 3 arrows. Sometimes it was tattooed onto the chest, sometimes it was tattooed onto the back or the shoulder, and sometimes the women wore a gorget with that so that they could be immediately recognized as Saponi. So that's what those arrowheads symbolize on our insignia. As an agricultural tribe, tobacco, corn, and wheat have been our subsistence crops. At times we owned land, and at times it was mostly sharecropping for white farmers who owned the land. The 7 feathers tied together represents our 7 families interdependent on each other as we have been throughout history. So farming, along with our Indian church and our Indian school, allowed us to remain self-sufficient. And here I thought you just might want to see, it's always helpful to see pictures. So our tribal center is up here in the corner, the top left. This is the woman with the purple shawl across her arm. That's our chairperson, Dorothy Stewart Crow. We do have a walking trail up there, and we have planted native fruits and trees on our walking trail. A picture of our walking trail. Tobacco has been part of our history for many years. One of our events is the quilting bee. Men, women, boys, girls, everyone quilts. Just some pictures of our area here on the bottom left. And this is our chief, Otis Martin, in the middle. And on the right is a picture of Mayo Lake. We hold a lot of events up at Mayo Lake, which is towards the north of Roxborough. It is actually a little bit south of our tribal center. This was actually it is a man-made lake. It was made for the power company, and the area was flooded to make that lake. that was part of our community. So there are homes, our graveyards, still some of that is underneath that lake. Quick touch on some of the timeline points. 1607 is the first recorded history from Europeans of us in Virginia. 1714 again was Fort Christiana, and this is a picture of the five-sided fort right there in Fort Christiana. It actually has a historic marker there in Virginia at that site. And our children did go to school there, but going back to the documentary that you saw, this began with Governor Spotswood, and in return for keeping the peace, our children were hostaged. So they figured that they would keep the cooperation of our tribe by keeping our children. And as it happened, it did work. That model, that precursor, was expanded across the United States in the next 100, 200 years. And there were many schools like that. One difference with this school is that I can happily say that there was eventually hired there a teacher that we all loved, and he was a good person, a good teacher. Even though the function of that school was to Christianize us, to turn us to Christianity, and to assure the cooperation of our grown people with the government of England, and to have us be Christians and learn English, we kind of took that opportunity as, yeah, okay. We will know our ways and we'll know your ways. And we were then able to interpret things that they probably did not want us interpreting, like treaties. So our children were then able to be liaisons for us and to our benefit because of this education. And because it wasn't the same setup as the punitive later boarding schools that you saw, it was hostage and secured, but it wasn't the same punitive arrangement as the others. So we could learn what we could learn from it. And I think that worked to our benefit. We have been in our current location in High Plains, in and out since the 1600s, but kind of permanently there in the 1720s, 30s, 40s, and certainly the 1750s. Another point going down to 1911, that's when we received state recognition from North Carolina as Indians of Person County. And then we were able to get funding for our Indian school, which if you go back up to the 1830s, that was our first church that we made. And in the 1860s and 70s, we had one room in the basement of the church that we deemed our school, and we ran it. We had our own people teaching the children what we could teach them and we felt they needed to know. In 1888, we received our first formal Indian school with board representation. But again, that was not funded by any outside public entity. It was completely funded by us until 1911 from North Carolina. And because we're across both states, in 1913 in Virginia. So when I say funding, well, you know what? Let's skip that for now. I'll get back into it when I get into schools. Hold that thought. Indians of Person County is what the state of North Carolina named us. We changed our name to be more reflective of who we actually are. I think it was 2000 or something. Oh, here, 2003, before we actually changed that legislatively. Similarly, the Lumbee were called Indians of Robeson County. Before that, the Lumbee were called the Croatans by North Carolina. So we, we were named. The church and the school has been the center of our community forever. So this is our Calvary Baptist Church in 2 separate time periods. This is our High Plains Indian School in 2 separate time periods. And this slide, I do want you to remember later, W. Lee Stewart, who happens to be my grandfather. This is here on him on the left. He was a Hunski, which means the head man of the Saponi for a number of years. He was instrumental in bringing schools to our tribe, bringing funding, public funding, state funding to our tribe. He and other Saponi leaders sat on our Indian Board of Education. He traveled to Raleigh and to Washington, D.C. many times to advocate for our children to have education, to have better education, to have funding, to have any funding, to have better funding. He also networked politically to our advantage. He wrote senators and governors. He was also instrumental in getting us recognized as a tribe. And the thing about that I want you to remember as we go down through another slide later. So this young man, this little boy here that my grandmother's holding, that's my Uncle Tony. And Tony went on to become Dr. Tony M. Stewart, Superintendent of Public Schools in both Virginia and North Carolina. Before he passed away in 2009, he was the superintendent of Elizabeth City Schools. He was also superintendent in Buncombe County and some others. So my grandfather, the Reverend W. Lee Stewart, who, because of our lack of funding and because of our agricultural existence, he only finished 3rd grade. My grandmother might have finished 4th, we're not quite sure. But his belief in his children, our children, the education of our children was so strong. He and some other people in our tribe, the education has been one of our most important initiatives. That is a little bit different from some other tribes. These photos were taken in about 1942, in case you're wondering, and this is my dad clutching his little bag of treats. So the community is agriculturally based, as are all the North Carolina tribes, tobacco being a big thing. Quilting is a very competitive sport among ladies and men. All the tribes, the Coharie especially, the Saponi, they have a lot of quilting competitions. And you might not also know that in the United States, American Indians as a whole, all tribes have the highest percentage in the service in the armed forces than any other marginalized group. And again, I'm only pulling pictures from my family because that's what I have and that's what I know. But any family that's Native in North Carolina could put hundreds of pictures up of this. And I do want to point out my aunt, Lois Epps, down there at the bottom. She couldn't finish high school because that's my great aunt, that's my father's aunt. But we don't actually separate ourselves like that in Indian culture. She couldn't finish high school because it only went to like the 7th grade when she was coming up. But she was determined. She didn't want to be a farmer. She didn't want to be a farmer's wife. And that's what became, that's what happened in that community. So she was determined. She said if she could have been a teacher and been hired to teach our children, she would have, but she knew that would not happen because we were not allowed to have Indian teachers. So she decided that she would join the Army and become a nurse. And then she was put on the same playing field level with white people who had graduated college, and she had to pass high school, college, and nursing school on the same level with them, and she did it. She taught herself. She became the first Saponi woman to leave home without without her family, without her parents. That's kind of unheard of at that time. So, it's like protection. So that's another thing that I'm proud of that will, again, point you to the importance of education to our families. All the tribes in North Carolina have a lot of events that they do. The events are different. Here's pictures of our Saponi homecoming. Homecoming it's not like a high school football game. It's a 3 or 4 day event. The Lumbee have a really huge homecoming. I think it lasts all week. I think theirs is in July, but I just wanted to show you some events. Quilting Bees is every January. Our fall stew is October, November every year. We have a cultural heritage program. We have a camp that lasts for a week in summer for our youth. Tribal center dedications. We have a 5K that happens. It's open to the public. And this is a 10-minute video that you can watch yourselves. This is a video that we created for us, by us. The North Carolina Museum of History has a fantastic event every November. And this year, since it was virtual, they asked that all the tribes create a video no more than 10 minutes telling about themselves. So in the notes, you'll see that there's a link at the bottom. You can watch any of the tribes' videos and anything else you're interested in about the event. It's a wonderful event. It is open for school children on the Friday, and it's open to the public on the Saturday, and it's a great event. No, we don't want to start that. So I'm now going to show you the other tribes. And just to orient you again, here they are. And I guess I'm kind of doing the rest of them alphabetically. So we'll be starting with the Coharie here. And just to show you a brief slide about them. And again, I have put the link to their tribe at the bottom, the official tribal website. Here is their insignia. They do have about 2,700 members, and some of their initiatives are the Coharie River Initiative, which is a huge thing. It's very popular. They've been cleaning up the river. All their youth participate. They also have really nice community gardens, so they all come together as a community to farm, and they all benefit from that. They have community talking circles, which begins to address substance abuse, emotional abuse and trauma, and they are very successful. Here's the Eastern Band of Cherokee. Their insignia has Cherokee writing on it. They are the only tribe with full federal recognition, and they run their own schools. They run everything themselves now, which is fabulous. They have that Qualla boundary, which is a sovereign nation, 100 square miles. This, I think, up here is a picture of their, they have a health facility, all kinds of things. The Halawa, that's Halawa and Warren counties. So the Halawa Saponi, the Saponi proper, us, and the Occaneechi Saponi, I think there's some confusion perhaps about the name difference, similarities. And what I will say is that I went to school in, I grew up outside of Philadelphia. I went to school, to high school in Westchester, not New York, but outside of Philly. And I didn't get the message that history is fluid and history changes based upon how much we know and how much we are learning. So history, as written by the victors, is presented one way. And when I grew up, it was textbooks that rarely changed. So the textbooks presented the victors' history one way. And I was taught, and I picked up, I guess, I assumed that that's just what happened. And that's not really such the case. So as we learn more, as we delve more and find more sources for our histories as tribes, The Halawa in the 70s, they did research and they came up with that they are connected to us, the Saponi. Turns out not so much. So that's a little bit of a misnomer now, which they now recognize and acknowledge. But, you know, that's now their legislative name. Okanichi, similarly, they have connected themselves to us through their written history, and some of that may not be quite on target as it was when they were recognized. So that explains the names there. The Halawa have about 3,800 members. They are a big tribe as far as North Carolina goes. They have a fabulous powwow every April. They have people engaged in language preservation, which largely consists of the Tutelo language. The Tutelo were one of our cousin tribes. There is no Saponi language left. There is Tutelo language left. There is Cherokee language left, but other than that, not so much. They do culture classes for their youth, and Sonora Lynch, who is a Halawa citizen, did the walkway at UNC that's right outside of the gift shop, I think. And it's beautiful. You should go down there and see it. It has statues lining all the sides. It's a beautiful thing. If you have not seen it, you should go see that. Sonora has also had artwork in the Smithsonian Museum. Glee Richardson Ogletree. She was on the State Advisory Council for many years. She's lovely, she's intelligent, and she is right now our only woman chief. And saying that, let me just say that Indian societies on the East Coast are very matriarchal societies, so our women have large roles in our governing and in our in everything. We have equal or more power than the men do. Oh wait, how do I go back? Because I wanted to show, I don't know if I can go back. When you go back, look at the Halawa's insignia. It is beautiful, beautiful. So go take a look at that. And on their website, it tells what all the things mean. The Lumbee are the largest tribe east of the Mississippi. They are the largest non-reservation tribe. They're the 9th largest tribe in the nation. They have over 55,000 members, which is enormous. And so they have different initiatives like the Lumber River Initiative, similar to the Coharie. They do a lot of patchwork. Pine cone patchwork is one of their heritage things. It's like quilting, but they look like pine cones. And their insignia it's essentially a medicine wheel and medicine wheel colors, traditional medicine wheel colors. And on their website, they do explain that too. The Meherrin also have a gorgeous insignia up there, and I believe that's explained more on their website. This was their chief for many years, Chief Wayne Brown. Sadly, he passed away last year, I believe, and I'm not sure that they have fully replaced him. They have culture and language revitalization and an annual powwow. And the Okanichi, you see their insignia there with the hawk and the canoe. Their community is called Little Texas. They have about 2,000 members now. They are doing talking circles and healthy living classes. They do have their own farm garden, just like the Coharie do, that I think is a community garden. And this is Miss Vivette Jeffries Logan at the powwow at NCSSM. NCSSM has had, North Carolina School of Science and Math has had one of the longest running multi-nation powwows of any school in the area. It's a fabulous powwow that usually happens in February. My daughter went to that school. The Waccamaw Siouan, they call themselves the people of the falling star. They have a legend about a star falling, a comet, over Lake Waccamaw. They have about 2,000 members. They do community gardens. They do talking circles and powwow, and they have a summer youth camp. So and this is their tribal center here. Indian schools. This was the start, the very start. In 1868, the North Carolina Constitution, it said that they would create a public school system free for all the children of the state aged 6 to 21. 7 years later, they were like, yeah, but not like that. They said the Constitution was amended to specify that the children of the white race and the children of the colored races should be taught in separate schools. So yeah, go to school, but not like that, not with us. So the American Indian communities at that time were concerned for the quality of their children's education should they be segregated, which they were. A couple things to understand about all historical Indian schools in North Carolina. You know, we're talking the 1800s, and they were multi-grade, some of them one classroom, multi-grades, multi-age. Most of them did not go through to the 12th grade. There wasn't any funding for that. And there wasn't any funding because that wasn't a belief that that was something that was good for the state of North Carolina. It was common for state and counties to require the Indian communities to come up with the land, the labor, the building materials for the school. In other words, yeah, we might help you fund it if your state recognized and if you can come up with the land and build it yourself. So it was also common at that time to open and close school buildings and change them. And that happened because of these other things, funding, lack of funding, new funding, closing a substandard building if they could have built a better one. All these things played into it. Also, when something is called a normal school, that means a teacher training school. And historical norms would still apply. So agriculture-based, just like many rural schools of white children in North Carolina and Virginia, there was seasonality to it. And you dropped out if you were needed at home on the farm. And many of them closed during planting season and harvesting season because the children couldn't come, they were needed at home. And that was true of many agricultural schools. So again, using my tribe's school as the detailed example, but understanding that these examples, the details may change, but the overarching concept is the same. And I think I have not researched African-American schools, but I think these overarching concepts are going to be pretty similar if somebody comes and presents about African-American schools. So 1714 to 1718, again, was the time of Fort Kirstana, which again started badly, and we found a way to turn it to our advantage. Because after that, we became one of the lead tribes known to work with the colonizers. So you can do a lot when you're in that position. After we came to where we are now, High Plains, we had one room in the church in 1878. 1888, we got that school board representation and we built a one-room school. We did not receive funding until 1911 from North Carolina, 1913 from Virginia. The states paid for the teachers and the books. The community was required to build the buildings and the playgrounds. Person County did give us one window sash. I want to give them their due. When the building was complete, the curriculum, as you might expect, was limited and inadequate. Only white teachers were allowed by Person County and Halifax County. They sent them. This is different than the Coharie and the Lumbee. They got to teach their own. We did not. Person County sent, and Halifax County, Virginia, they sent teachers and principals. And I don't know if there's any, like, I'm going to say this as tactfully as I can. They sent the teachers who could not perform well or were removed from the white schools. Sometimes they were removed for inappropriate contact with little children. That's who we got. I am saying what you think that I'm saying. In the 30s and the 40s, our school was well attended. In the 30s, we served, and looking at our old school board records from the 30s and 40s, we served 7 grade levels. We had upwards of 100 children, 115, 120 children. We had no running water, no gym, no cafeteria. The library is recorded in our board minutes as being one shelf in one classroom. About 1950, we did have a cafeteria added, and there in the bottom right picture, you can see that renovated school. And in 1952 is the first time that the school went through 12th grade and had a graduating class and curriculum and teachers to support that, but the curriculum was still inadequate. Over on the right, this is 3 members of the first graduating class in 1952. And in 1962, the assimilation was happening and schools were closing that only served children of color. But let me say, North Carolina was not quick on the draw, neither was Halifax County, Virginia. I think it's the Cohary School didn't close because other schools weren't open to them until 1967 or 68. Some communities, might be Roanoke Rapids, did not really integrate until 1970, early 70s. So when you say assimilation, like that could be the law, that's not necessarily what happened. So our Indian School Board voted to request that our students, high school students, attend larger, better funded schools at the time that assimilation was happening. Person County granted that. Halifax County did not have anywhere that they allowed our children to attend because they still had separated schools, segregated schools. So those folks, those children of ours that are still in our tribe, they just happen to be across the Virginia line, they attended Person County schools. And so Person County and Halifax County split the funding, school buses and teachers and all things like that. Here is our historical marker. Our school is no longer there. I'll just give you a minute if you want to read through that yourself. And so when I say that the church and the school were the centers of our community, they really were. There were a lot of really fun activities. There was a school play every year. They had every member of the community, whether they had kids or not, went to the school events. They had things like the girls would make buckets. That was the lunch boxes, buckets. Picnic baskets for the boys to raise money for the school. The boys would bid on them. You know, the girls they were sweet on, they would buy their baskets. There was just fun stuff that happened at the school and the church. And when you think about it, we had 7 families that were used to, for hundreds of years, we stayed to ourselves up in the hills, up in the isolated area for a reason. So we stayed there and we were used to riding the bus and having our cousin be the bus driver and having, you know, somebody knock on the school door and say, here's your lunch. You know, we were used to playing with our brothers and our sisters and all our hundreds of cousins. We were used to that. So when the children got shipped out, we lost a big social center of our community, and the children now had to face racism in school, which they did not have to face when it was just us. So one thing that I had wanted you to remember was the slide of my Uncle Tony and my grandfather and grandmother and my father. So after I gave you that detailed slide of all the history of our school 2 slides ago, I just want you to keep in mind how remarkable that is, that those children, all 4 of their children went to college, graduated college. Tony obviously had his doctoral degree. And you're talking parents who went to 3rd and 4th grade, and there was a limited curriculum. So I want you to understand how remarkable that is. And we are not the only family in the Saponi like that, nor are we the only family in North Carolina tribes like that. On these slides, I have continued to keep the official tribal website there for you. And at the top, I have put the name by which we call each other and people who know tribes call each other. So the Coharie did have 1910 to 1938, the Shiloh Indian Sunday School, which was, as our school in our church was, more than a church and more than a school. They were then given the New Bethel Indian School until 1941. And here again, they used their own funds and their own teachers. We weren't allowed to do that. In 1911, the legislature gave them their own school system, and that was New Bethel, but they took it away again in 1913, but then it was reinstated. So when you see schools closing and opening and gaps in learning, that's why. And probably their most famous is in 1943, they were given the East Carolina Indian School. This is still in their community now, and it is their tribal center. That's where all their gardens and everything is now. And they house their administrative offices there now. The Eastern Band, EBCI, that's what we call them. We don't ever say the whole thing out because it's long. Starting in the 1800s, operated by the Quakers. U.S. Indian Service, later named the Bureau of Indian Affairs, then operated their schools until 1954. 1962, again, assimilation. The community day schools were closed and they had a central elementary school. It wasn't until 1990 that they were allowed to and became able to operate their own tribal schools. At that time, their council authorized their Cherokee Indian School Board to operate the schools. That is a good thing. They incorporate American Indian culture. And if you look here, I have just a picture on their websites. They have a whole section for culture. They have it Cherokee specific, but also larger than that. So they have about 1,300 students in their K-12 system, one elementary, one middle, and one high school. And those schools are doing very well. The Halawa, we don't ever say Halawa Saponi. The Halawa, I mean, they don't either. The Halawa are the only ones who have their school is still running. It is the Halawa Tribal School. That charter school was established in 2000. It's K-12. And it does serve the kids in Halawa and Warren counties. 1957, it operated as a private Indian school. So, you know, it's gone back and forth being used as a community building. And now again, it is a school. They also have a heavy amount of American Indian culture that they incorporate. I actually was a consultant for them. They were trying to bridge the gap between their cultural education and the standards. So I helped them to map the standards, the state standards, to their cultural education in science and social studies and ELA. So now, after those sessions, they would have the tools to go back and say, okay, so we're doing a session on the river and we want to test the water, but we need to tie it to our science standards and our ELA standards and anything else and make sure we're rigorous in that. So that is a more recent push. And here's a picture of some of their graduates, and you see their insignia. The Lumbee, they had a number of K-12 schools, and I feel like I wasn't able to find as many specifics on them because it seems that most old records concentrate on the Croatan Normal School, and that is now UNC Pembroke. It's gone through many iterations, but the Croatan, remember I told you they were called the Croatans? That's just like my tribe was called the Cubans. So we were the Cubans until they decided to call us Indians of Person County. Lumbee were the Croatans until they decided to call them Indians of Robeson County. So that opened the Croatan Normal School to train teachers. It was multi-age. If you look at that picture, you can see all different age students there. That opened in 1887. and then it was called Indian Normal School instead of Croatan Normal School. By 1916, that's the middle picture. And then they were featured in Life magazine, and that's a picture of that. So they did have many high schools. It's a large area that they're in. So I have the names of the high schools that I could find up there and the different schools that I could find opening and closing dates for there. So the tribes are the ones that have the specific information. If I go in to find information about these schools, I might know more than somebody who's not a native North Carolinian. I might know different places to find information, but I don't have it all. Just like a Lumbee person would not be able to know all the information that I found about the Saponi. So the tribes are the ones that keep the detail about those. So if you're interested in more detail about any of those, the tribes would be the one who has that information. So according to the United Tribes of North Carolina, and we do have a conference every year. So in our 2008 year, they highlighted the Indian schools, and that was the focus for that conference year in 2008. And they have an explanatory paragraph in there about the Occaneechi and the Meherrin. Prior to public school desegregation, not all Indian tribes in North Carolina who have state recognition now attended a separate Indian school. Two such tribes are the Meherrin and the Occaneechi. So they said that the Occaneechi attended McCrae School prior to 1924 and Martin School 1924 and later. And the Indian tribes saying this information, that means that the Occaneechi supplied that information, because there are Occaneechi people on the United Tribes board who creates this. So that means that that was the information supplied by the Occaneechi. So I did find a picture of the McCrae School down there at the bottom left. And there's apparently a renovation project underway that started in February of this past year. And there's the link for that. When the McCrae School closed in 1951, Pleasant Grove opened in 1952. And of course, that's not the only schools. McCrae, Pleasant Grove, Martin School, I could not find any record of, and Eflin Cheeks. So Eflin Cheeks' history does go back to early 1900, and it was a Rosenwald school, which I didn't know. So if you don't know about Rosenwald schools, you need to click on that and learn. So that is a program where extra funding, extra schools was sent to certain largely African-American schools all throughout the South. So that's the Occaneechi. And the Waccamaw had several Indian schools going way back. And I would assume that they probably funded most of those themselves, just like most of us did. And so there's an article there, again, a push that I found out that started in last year, I think, by the archaeology department. And I'm so glad I went to this detail to find information about these schools, because I learned a lot doing this. There's an archaeological project underway to map the North Carolina American Indian schools. And the ones I'm showing you and telling you about now, that's not even the tip of, that's not even the tip of the iceberg. There are many, many, many more that have no record anymore or are defunct or that kind of thing. So I assume that's why the Department of Archaeology is mapping those. So I also have resources for you. The North Carolina Commission Affairs is a good source of information. The North Carolina State Advisory Council on Indian Education. That top link you would probably want to click on just to know what it is. When I was on there, I was on the Culturally Responsive Instruction Committee, and I, along with my committee, developed many of the website resources that are on there now. Unfortunately, they have not kept up with that since I left and updated them, but they are still there. That is a really good source of information. If you go to this link called American Indian Education, you can get the State Advisory Council annual reports. They have them there online for 2017 to 2020. These are the reports that the advisory council makes every year, and it's largely Title VI districts that think they're the only ones who should be concerned with them. But I faithfully brought them back to Dr. Chapman and Dr. Bridges when I worked in Orange County before, because it's about culturally responsive instruction. It's about academic achievement, reading scores, math scores, all broken out by district. So you probably want to take a look at that. And there's also a recommendation in the very beginning of it. The president of SACE writes a recommendation at the beginning. I've also developed, along with that committee, a DPI module with a DPA liaison, David Wahlberg. At that time, he was the tech liaison to get our models up and running. It's course number 8048, Culturally Responsive Teaching About American Indians, and it's a self-paced course. I would encourage everyone to take that course. It has gotten really good responses, largely, again, from Title VI districts. But it doesn't have to be. Like, you don't have to have a majority of your students be native in order to have your teachers need to or want to or should be teaching accurately about natives. So to stop the 300, 400 year perpetuation of stereotypes, that education of teachers is key. The unlearning of the stereotypes, the learning to call them out, learning to call them what they are. And that's what this course helps with. And then, of course, there's also the National Indian Education Association. And I did want to give you, as Dr. Felder pointed out, I did want to give you, where can we go from here? So it's about building relationships. It's about building trust, as you can imagine. So here are my suggestions for things that can be done, places to start. And I put the website in there for the Indian Education Formula Grants. To get that grant, you do have to have one Indian teacher in the district to lead that and 10 Indian students. And if you don't meet that requirement, I would encourage you to think of, well, how else can we make resources available to teach about Native Americans accurately and to teach to Native American families respectfully? So I also wanted to leave time for some discussion and question. So I'm going to stop sharing and hope I left enough time. Sorry, I thought it would go much faster.
That's okay. Thank you so much, Ms. Stewart, for sharing that wealth of information. And I know it's just the tip of the iceberg, and I'm so glad we have 2 more sessions with you. And if we don't have time for all our questions today, maybe some of us can write them out and be prepared so we can share them with you. But who would like to start with questions? I have a few, but I want to go to our other board members first, or others. Please just jump in.
Yeah, I'll start by just saying thank you for putting this together in such a well thought manner, to be able to consume it, because you're right, it's a lot of information, timelines, and, just the various activities. You talked about how history keeps evolving, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Could you tell me something that you've learned through this that wasn't obvious, that was really surprising? Because as we go through it, there's lots of things in there that are, obviously, not the proudest moments of any of our culture, so I'm just curious if there's one that stuck out to you while you were doing that.
I'm not going to say anything earth-shattering. I'm probably going to say exactly what you expect, but it's something I already knew, but I didn't know it so clearly and in this context. I have never gone this deeply into learning about the Indian schools in North Carolina of all tribes before. I've of course, known about mine, and I am also involved in writing the history of our tribe, my tribe, but to actually go out and research and learn and find photographs and try to match up dates. You know, there is no source that says, here are all the Indian schools in North Carolina and here's the history of them. You know, there's nothing. It's like a piece here and a piece here, and then you have to match it up with this. And then you have to think, wait a minute, who's telling this history? And then you have to go back to the Indians and you have to go to their website and you're like, yeah, I'm going to believe you, not them. So given that, I think that was a huge learning thing for me. And I will say it took me a really long time to make this, because I was not expecting to learn this much about the Indian schools. So I think that, and I think also, this is also going to be something that I also already said, so you're not going to be surprised, to have side by side all the details of the Saponi school, from being abused by teachers and principals, to lack of education, to no funding, to couldn't finish grade levels, putting that side by side with a picture of my grandfather and uncle, to me, that was a shining moment. You know, like, you know what? You tried your best. We are still here. We are still education #1 priority. And I can't say that about all the tribes, because when you look at the State Advisory Council annual reports, Mr. Atherton, it's dismal. It is dismal. Person County is the only one, and we are the only one that has only Saponi in our district. And we're so small that they don't even break out the numbers, because if they say there's 2 that took the 3rd grade EOG, we'll be like, that was Maylene's child. She told him to study more. You know, like, we know who it is, right? So we don't break ours out by numbers because it's that small. But, you know, we are the only Title VI district that does not use Title VI funds only for remediation. We use them for world experiences. We take the kids to Washington, D.C. because they've never been. We take them to the beach because they've never been. The other districts, they have to use them for remediated funding, you know. So to me, to see that right there, here's what you did to us with your schools. Thank you very much for your funding. We'd rather do it ourselves, but okay. And here's where we still are. Here's what got you. You know, like, to me, that was a shining moment.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for asking that.
I'll let others ask questions.
Hillary, do you want to?
I just have a comment also. I just want to thank you, Ms. Stewart, so much for this presentation. And I just want to tell you how much I value this information and what a gift I think you are to our district, that you are a part of our culture here. And I'm just so thankful for this information, and just really want to elevate how important and mission critical I think it is to our district right now to engage with this history, because if we don't understand where we've been, we don't know where we're going. So
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will say in return, it meant the world to me that my home district, my favorite district, the district that I started in, the district that I love, would be doing this.
I had a question, Ms. Stewart, about what is your sense of, I was noting, like you mentioned, I think, is it the Lumbee that's the largest tribe with about
Yes.
50,000? So, you know, how much do you feel like there are members that aren't necessarily registered as members? Because I'm trying to think, you know, if I was adding up tens of thousands from the different tribes you mentioned, and it's like 100,000, 200,000 people, but do you feel like that's like just a mere fraction, like a tenth of, yeah? And I'm thinking about the clans you mentioned, like the 7 families, and how many generations that must go. Is that, do you know how many generations the Saponi? I'm sure you do. Like, when you talk about 7 clans, It's hundreds of people though, right? So I'm thinking of.
So you've opened up a whole can of worms there. There is a difference between being a tribal community member and being an enrolled member. That's the whole can of worms. That's a big debate in Indian country right now, because there's all kinds of stipulations to that, and there's a big debate about what should and shouldn't be a stipulation. The numbers that we have put on this presentation, and I say we because I worked with my daughter, and part of what she did was making these slides from the UNC American Indian Center when she worked there. Those are enrolled numbers.
Right.
So for the Saponi, and I can say probably it's the same thing in the other tribes, every tribe is allowed to state what their qualifications are in order to be an enrolled member. That's our right. So we state what our qualifications are, and every tribe is different. So for the Saponi, we kept our enrollment open for 5 years. For 5 years, we hammered out to the people, get those forms in. We're going to close it. Get those forms in, because we had to present a petition with closed rolls to the BIA for federal recognition. So some people did get it in, and some people were like, wait, you forgot me. How can I not be a member when my brother is? And we're like, sorry, you missed the cutoff. So you do have families where, you know, one brother is an enrolled citizen and the other is not. That doesn't mean that they are both tribal community members, but they're not both enrolled in the tribe because one missed the cutoff. It's a paperwork thing. So that's the answer to that. So yes, there are people who are part of our communities who are not represented on the rolls for various reasons.
There. And I
Did
know
I answer it?
You did, and I know I kind of went in 3 different directions. I mean, there's so many directions I want to go in, and I know we'll come back to because, you know, when we're presented with our, you know, student achievement broken down by ethnicity, I know we all know that we're seeing an underrepresentation of our Native population, and I was just curious about that. And I know Dr. Keeling's aware of the, I want to hear more, I know we'll come back to this, about sort of qualification as a district, you know, for the grant money and things like that. So I look forward to having more conversation about that.
Mhm.
And I think we can, we had saved some time at the end of the meeting for board discussion that I am happy for us to squish out. So if we can, is it okay with Ms. Braxton and Dr. Dawson if we take a few more minutes for questions before I see Dr. Dawson giving a thumbs up, okay. So do we have some other questions for Ms. Stewart? One thing I'd like to understand better, and if we don't have time, it's okay, but when you talked about like a superintendent, when was it your own superintendent that you selected for yourself, and when was it like an outside, you know, and I'm talking about like the early 1900s, like the state assigned a superintendent to you, and maybe one of these resources when we go back, because I know you said you're sharing the slide, so I'll go back and read some of this, but just understanding the difference of like the appointed people versus the self-selected people.
So the self-selected would be our Indian Board of Education. That would be our self-elected, our Indian Board of Education. And so I know my grandfather was on that, Nanny Lou Martin, you know, just some of the bigger leader names in our tribe were on that, as well as parents of the children. So that was our Indian board. But Person County and Halifax County, Virginia, you know, they had their own superintendents attending that meeting as our superintendent. You know what I mean? Like it was, yeah. So I don't know that they particularly cared that we had our own Indian Board of Education, but we did, and we made it standard.
So I want to just say, Ms. Stewart, thank you so much for your presentation. You are certainly a jewel, and we are very, very fortunate to have you in Orange County schools and to have this opportunity to learn from you. I've learned a lot, and look forward to continuing to process what I've heard and go back and click on the links and just take a deeper dive, and just thrilled to know that you will you've got at least 2 more sessions. You never know. It certainly blossom into more than that in other through other forums and venues. But you know, one of the things you mentioned as an actionable next step would be around building relationships, and you know, that's something that we are seeking to do with a number of you know,
Sorry.
that's okay. Different groups in the district, and even strengthen the partnerships that we have. And I just wondered, based on your experience, any recommendations, anything that come to mind that you have found to be effective with engaging our Native American community in particular? What can we do more of, less of, differently, start doing, stop doing to better engage our Native American families?
I think this goes back to what Dr. Dawson was saying about going into the communities and not always expecting them to come to us. And I think in the case of American Indian communities in particular, if we are going to the Occaneechi, well, we need to have an Occaneechi person liaison with us to go there and to speak for us. So, you know, I think it's so much a matter of trust. So one of their own that we have spoken with, that we've presented a plan to, that person would know how to present that plan and reach out to those families. So I think having a liaison and having the ability to go to them on their turf would go a long way. And listening, not just listening to say, oh gosh, I'm so sorry that happened, but listening to say, I hear you, I will address that, and then getting back with them after it's addressed. Here's what I did, you know, or listening to them. What do you think would help? And hearing what they want. We've had so many years of, you know, not even being able to call ourselves our own name. You know, we've been told our name, we've been told our school, we've been told what we're good for, you know. We would like to determine that. We would like to be able to say what would be best for our students. So being open to hearing that would be a really good step, and going to them.
Thank you so much. Very helpful.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Feldman.
Thanks again, Ms. Stewart. I appreciate so much your trusting us with hearing your story with the juxtaposed success and beauty and trauma and discrimination. And yeah, I know to a small degree how hard it is to hold those things side by side. And I think you sharing both in such an open way. I truly, truly appreciate you're willing to share all of that with us.
Sure. Thank you so much for inviting me. I would say if anybody has Any questions? I'm certainly open to receiving them. If you'd like it to be a personal question, that's fine too. I'm open to receiving those by email. If you wanted to wait and ask me, if I'm at the next one, that's fine too. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ms. Stewart, so much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's right. I think we have a round of applause. I think we almost missed that. Good, she's still here.
I'm unmuting.
Thank you all. I'm going to go because I have some equity PD I need to do this afternoon.
Right. Excellent.
Yeah. All right.
We'll see you next
Bye,
time.
everybody.
We'll be in touch.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Dr. Dawson, would you like us to take a minute or even just before we go ahead, or you and Ms. Braxton wanting to just move on into the presentation? It's up to y'all.
I'm sure that Ms. Braxton and her team are ready because they've been preparing and looking forward to their presentation. But of course, we have been here for 2 hours. But I think everyone is probably taking their own natural breaks as needed. But I want to say that Ms. Braxton is probably ready and her team are ready to go.
Okay, that sounds great. Is that okay with you, Will, if we just proceed?
Yeah.
Great.
Yes.
Great. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. If you do need to take a break, we're okay with that. Those of you know me well know that I am a very fast talker and I have to consciously make myself slow down so that I can be understood. So are we good to go? I need the ability to share my screen. So Mr. Jones or Mr. Schofield, if one of you could give me that access. And while I'm waiting on that, I will say I'm grateful to be here today. I also have with me today our team. So Melinda Forns, who is our CIMC. She is the Curriculum Instructional Management Coordinator. We also have with us Nick Montgomery from Orange and Stephanie Smith from Cedar Ridge. They are our career development coordinators. And they will each take an opportunity to speak with you this morning in areas of their expertise. I tell my team all the time that I am nowhere an expert in all of our diverse areas of career technical ed. And so I rely heavily on each individual's expertise because together the team makes career technical ed strong. I'd love to be able to show my screen. So Mr. Jones or Mr. Schofield, if you have an opportunity to give me access. I am continuously watching the little, oh, there it comes. I was going to say, I continuously watch to see when I can hit that share button. All right. If someone can give me the thumbs up or unmute and you can see my screen, see it, perfect. And I'm going to maximize this over here so that I can see. Okay, here's the problem. My slides are over there and you're here, as is my camera. So I'm going to look at my slides so I make sure that I'm moving ahead. And my slide did not move. Did yours? You on slide 2?
No.
There we are. There we are. Learning. There we go. I just had to click it. Are you seeing slide 2 now? So,
yes,
Ms. Doyle, you said in the last community engagement meeting, you said CTE is beautifully complicated. And I believe those are true words. And I wish I had had those words some years ago, because that really does describe career technical ed. We are varied in the opportunities, the skills, and the experience that we offer students in grades 6 through 12. We have general CTE courses, and then we have very specific, high-tech, high-demand courses as well. And we're thankful to a previous board member through the CTE ad hoc committee who asked for more print materials. I believe he even called it a report to the people. And so from that bloomed these monthly or bi-monthly reports that you get that highlight our social media posts. I'm going to plug Melinda Forns here. She's our tech person, and she manages that Twitter account, the Instagram account, and then I try to retweet, because we know that social media is where all of our young people are, but we also know that we have people that are in print. And so this report to the people allows us to be able to highlight our staff and the beautifully complex nature of career technical ed. And while I'm on the slide, you're going to hear about this, but let me just plug right now to tell you that Cedar Ridge High School, for the 5th year in a row, has got a team that has qualified for the Personal Finance State Championship. And those 3 students did the prelim to that competition last week over spring break. So that speaks highly to our teachers, that speaks highly to our students. And so we're really excited. It's a virtual event again this year, as it was last year in the spring. So we're really excited. You'll see that in a board update. You'll see it if you've been on Twitter, you've already seen it, because that is quick communication to our public. Whenever we look at our program or any program, we should always remind ourselves of the mission, vision, purpose, and goals. So I usually add the state mission, vision, purpose, and goals to any presentation to ground us and to serve as new information for some and then a review for others. Each public school unit must align with the state mission, vision, purpose, and goals in career technical ed, because our funding channels from the federal government through state DPI to the PSU. So it's very important that we're always in an alignment. These are the state purposes, and these are the state goals. Also, I'll point out that on just about every one of our slides, we have a picture of students and teachers to make sure that we are highlighting the work that's being done, because there are a lot of teachers and students in Orange County schools in career technical ed. So make sure that you take a minute to zoom in on those pictures and to see that work.
And Ms. Braxton, I'm sorry to interrupt, but just to be clear, these are pictures that were taken pre-pandemic.
Yes. If
Yes.
you see any without a mask, they were
Just wanted to say
pre-pandemic.
that. Okay, we assume that,
Because
but
of
just
course,
wanted to be
just
clear.
recently have we had students in a business lab, as you're seeing on this one. And that is our great teacher, Miss Kentelia Wingate, who has left Orange County Schools because she was went to school to be a career development coordinator, and we miss her greatly. So yes, pre-pandemic, pre-mask requirements. This slide is the state goals. And as we continue to work on our new strategic plan for Orange County Schools, we're going to ensure that the Orange County Schools career technical education specific goals align here and also align with the district strategic plan. I want to make sure that I highlight that in 2018, there were 4 goals, 4 pillars that were presented to the board, and those align to these state goals. I love this slide, and I hope you will zoom in, look closely, read all the words. This is the CTE vision for the future that came from Advanced CTE in a March 2021 communication called Without Limits, a shared vision for the future of career technical ed. And our state CTE mission, vision, purpose, and goals parallel. I want to look at those 5 principles. Principle 1, each learner engages in a cohesive, flexible, responsive career preparation program. Principle 2, each learner feels welcome in, is supported by, and has the means to succeed in a career preparation ecosystem. Principle 3, each learner skillfully navigates their own career journey. Principle 4, each learner's skills are counted, valued, and portable. And principle 5, each learner can access CTE without borders. The vision of Advanced CTE's future is CTE without limits. We love that so much. And if I knew how to backtrack to slide 1, which I don't, now that I can't use my mouse, using the back arrow key, you will see our emblem for CTE Orange County. And when you look back on that, I want you to see that we've added, Melinda has gone in and tweaked that logo and added without limits. My team will tell you that oftentimes when we're faced with any situation, something that we need to problem solve, that we need to address, there's two questions I ask often. What is best for the student? And is that a barrier, or and can that, if it is a barrier, can that barrier be removed? And so without limits really sums up my questions. What's best for students? And is the situation a barrier? And if it is a barrier, how can we remove that barrier? So what we want to do in Orange County Schools Career Technical Ed is we want to embrace and expand CTE in Orange County without limits. We want to question and push and make decisions that commit to those 5 principles at the bottom of that slide, which align with Orange County's pillars. We want to make sure that we're committed to equity, quality programs, partnerships, actionable data, and continuous improvement and collaboration. We are thankful to the CTE Business Advisory that back in 2018 in the fall helped work on those pillars for CTE, and then the continued work of the CTE Ad Hoc Committee through the spring of 2019, I'll get it right in a minute, the Ad Hoc Committee in 2019 that really questioned and helped us to have communication about career technical ed in Orange County schools. Vocational education has evolved to meet the needs of business and industry. Our program name has changed since the 1917 Smith-Hughes Act, but the name Career Technical Education has been established since 2006. The Ad Hoc Committee allowed me and the CTE leadership to engage in those conversations around topics presented by the committee members and the need for continuous marketing of the Career Technical Ed program.
Good morning. Thank you, Shannon. I'm going to pick up on the next few slides.
Oops, I clicked it, Melinda. Now I don't know how to go back.
It's okay. You can leave it there. There you go. Okay, so North Carolina Career and Technical Education has 7 program areas, and we are pleased in Orange County CTE to offer courses in all 7 of these program areas. In Orange County schools, we have over 86, yes, 86 different courses, but that does not include courses that we teach in both the regular standard curriculum. So like, you know, we have just a regular marketing class, but then we also have courses that are honors level with rigorous curriculum and activities. And we even have some project lead the way courses in our trade technology and trade technology, engineering, and industrial area that does provide an extra quality point to students towards their GPA. So the next 2 slides, you will see the courses that we offer in Orange County schools by program area. So please note that students on the high school level do have the opportunity to take advanced studies. So if they have taken a level 1 and 2 in a program area, they have an opportunity to take an advanced studies where they do research in that program area about a particular career, gain more hands-on skills in that area, soft skills, network a little bit with industry, and do a research portfolio. They create a product and present, which will then lead them hopefully into an internship where they'll gain real world experience. This list also shows courses that are available as an honors level. On this slide, you see our continued courses in our program area. Please note that we do have some AP advanced placement courses, particularly in the computer science and information technology area. And we do have our Project Lead the Way available in our middle schools. And on the high school level, as I said earlier, students can gain an extra quality point in some of those Project Lead the Way courses.
So with Perkins 5 and a desire to align courses and course pathways, North Carolina DPI CTE has created this North Carolina course management system. And I'm going to try, tell me if this works, to slide another screen over so I can show you the site in live. Thanks, Mr. Atherton. This is an amazing addition for the community of CTE, but also for the larger community to be able to see the North Carolina clusters and the course pathways. And so we know there are 16 career clusters, or 16 course clusters. And then if I were to click here, so we have public safety at both Orange and Cedar Ridge. Up pops the career pathway. And so what we see here are any middle grade exploration courses that's in the state of North Carolina. There's no foundational prereq, but there is a prereq. So public safety 1 is required first. And then the concentrator course would be public safety 2. And then if the student wanted to take it to the next level, they could do a career pathway major. And then listed underneath are supplemental courses, work-based or experiential learning, and then career CCP, career and college promise pathways throughout the state of North Carolina, and then any extracurricular in our CTSOs. And so this site is just absolutely wonderful as a public-facing link where you can look. And these are all the ones from the state of North Carolina. And so I'm going to move this back for 1 second. Oh, I didn't. We took these slides out. This presentation was 78 slides. I didn't think y'all wanted to see 78 slides. Stop laughing. I see y'all laughing. If you will allow me, I would love to share those 78 slides with you in maybe a board report just for your information, because it does have some screenshots of this site, but I was hoping to be able to show it to you specifically. And while I'm on this slide, Mr. Atherton, you mentioned about something that you saw maybe at a school board about researching careers. I think that school system had something really specific, but on this site, accessible to all, is the North Carolina career site. And our school counselors use this, elementary, middle, and high school. Our career development coordinators use this. This is the northcarolinacareers.org, which is based with many government committees and advisory boards, but it allows students to find their interests. There's career interest surveys, explore occupations. They literally can go on here and look for jobs. They can search for jobs, and they can pick their city, their region, their county. They can look at surrounding areas, and those are live jobs, and this is a live site. So I wanted to make sure that I showed that to you because that is part of this North Carolina Career Technical Education course management system, which again is just a really great site that DPI of North Carolina has put together and has made us all aware of, and it's usable.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. The center of that slide or that site is very, very similar to what I saw, which was, you know, refrigeration mechanics and installers, and it showed the mean wage and the growth rate, so people would know, is this a growing area or a stable area? So thank you for showing that.
Well, I'm glad to know that what they showed you then was very similar to what is available to all through the northcarolinacareers.org site. Also in your presentation, oh, sorry, Ms. Doyle.
I'm sorry, Ms. Braxton. I was just gonna say, I noticed in your site on the address up there that it says North Carolina State University. Is this?
Yes.
So this is this, that's interesting. How is the CTE, like the statewide network of it, connected to NC State or?
So NC State is a partner with North Carolina Department of Public Instruction, and they are a huge partner in career technical ed. So if from my lane of being a foods and nutrition teacher, our food safety came, the teaching materials all came written through NC State because they are just a partner, and they are a partner in providing resources like our Moodle site that our teachers are able, so they're able to talk with teachers across the state, is all through NC State. So that, what would that be called? They would be the host of that platform.
Right.
And I finally figured out how to mute myself when other people are talking. So I'm learning all kinds of stuff today. I'm very grateful. Okay, I'm gonna move this back over. So in your PowerPoint deck, you saw this slide, which was just a screenshot to show you the 16 career clusters. But I also wanted to highlight that on these slides are Cedar Ridge and Orange specific, because we know that it's complicated. There's a lot that comes into CTE, and no one is expected to be an expert in every single area. So what our career development coordinators have done is they have looked at all the career pathways. They've looked at what we're offering in Orange County, and they have aligned that to what's taught at their school, so that students at each high school can look at their career pathway chart and see that. So I'm going to pull up just quickly for your review, and you can look at it closely. I just clicked on the first one, which is Cedar Ridge. And so what's happened here is you've got the career cluster, then you have the career pathways that are offered at Cedar Ridge, and then if there was any prereq, the concentrator course, if there is an extra step, which if they wanted to take it to the next level, there's also the supplemental courses, and then any that are aligned to our community college partners. We have listed the career and college promise, the CCP pathway. And so we have that for every course, every program that's offered at our high schools. So that brings me to what is a concentrator. We've talked about this a lot in our ad hoc committee back in 2019. What is a concentrator? What makes a concentrator? And so that's changed with Perkins 5. And so this breaks down that little chart, which I think is wonderful because I'm a visual learner and I like to see it and then I can visualize it later. It talks about what's required and what's supplemental. And any student who takes and successfully completes the concentrator course is a concentrator. And what is the concentrator course? It's whatever's listed there in orange. We're grateful. We didn't create that color. It's nice that it talks about Orange County. It looks good for us in the county, but we didn't create that. But any concentrator course in orange, when a student successfully completes that course, they are a concentrator. I'll remind you that in Perkins 4, a concentrator was a student who had to take 4 classes, 4 CTE courses in a specific pathway. That's no longer the case. In Perkins 5, a pathway may be, most pathways are 2 courses. There is just a couple of pathways that have 3 courses. So they have a foundational prereq, they have the prereq, and then they have the concentrator course. And so what that means for our board is that policy 3460 is going to need to be edited. And I've already gone through that. We've passed that out through the team. And so through policy committee, we'll bring that to you so that we can make sure that our policy in Orange County is aligned to what was the definition of a concentrator, which is no longer that 4-course sequence. Do you have any questions about that before I move on?
So the Perkins, is that like a state? So I'm like Googling this on the side. So that's like the state overarching term for, it's like a sequential years handbook or something, or what does that mean? Like all CTE courses in the state conform to a Perkins policy manual, or?
I'm so sorry. See, education. I knew what I was talking about. And it's so important when we use slang that we explain. And so Carl D. Perkins is who the federal legislation is named after. And that was on slide maybe 3 when it went, no, it was farther along than that. The history, Carl D. Perkins of 1984 was the first time that Carl Perkins, that was the name of that federation. Before that, that was the Smith-Hughes Act of 1917, and then it was the Vocational Act. So we simplify the federal funding to Perkins. And so Perkins has been reauthorized, and we're on that 5th iteration of that reauthorization, which was in 2018. So we simplify it and say we are governed by the federal government and the federal legislation around Carl D. Perkins. The Perkins 5, short name, the official long title in the federal government is the Strengthening Career and Technical Education Act for the 21st Century. So you see, that's a mouthful. So we simplified it to Perkins 5. But thank you for asking that question, because we have to be reminded when we talk our educational slang to make sure that we make sure that everyone understands. So thank you.
So we wanted to provide you with a little data since we were talking about concentrators in Orange County. So this is just a summary slide showing the total number of CTE concentrators dating back to 2016-17. I do want to point out that if you look at Partnership, Partnership Academy is low because of maybe one of 2 reasons. They may have been a concentrator at either Orange or Cedar Ridge before transferring in. So they could have possibly, you know, been counted in that batch before transferring to Partnership. Or unfortunately at Partnership, you know, we have just some selective courses right now. We're teaching career management at Partnership, which is very, very valuable for all, but particularly for the caliber student of Partnership Academy. So what I'm kind of going to is we don't have any concentrator courses at Partnership Academy at this time. Also, if you look, you see a little bit of a drop in concentrators at Cedar Ridge. And that was due to, we had to drop the drafting program. We lost drafting 1 and 2 due to a teacher that was in retirement. And unfortunately, that's one of those teaching positions that is hard to find and to get back. So if they are a CTE concentrator, then they are required to, by the state, and also given the esteemed opportunity to take what we call the ACT Work Keys assessment. This assessment is district driven, so meaning that accountability is responsible for providing students access to this assessment. And not CTE. In CTE, our only role is to identify those students who are CTE concentrators. And basically, to identify if a student is a CTE concentrator, we go through Power School and, you know, kind of do it the old school way to make sure that we don't miss any students. And we actually go through student transcripts. And we use those career pathways that Shannon showed you a few slides earlier to make sure that we're identifying the correct students. So through the Work Keys assessment, students do have the opportunity to earn what they call a National Career Readiness Certificate. And this is a certificate that's recognized by many industries. Oh, you can go ahead, Shannon. So this slide shows the percentage of Orange County School CTE concentrators earning an ACT Work Keys National Career Readiness Certificate. And there are different levels of the certificate, just showing different levels more skill ability in particular workforce areas. So platinum being the highest and bronze being the lowest. Please note that there's no official data for the 2019-2020 year. We did identify CTE concentrators. However, due to the pandemic, there was a waiver, so students did not have to take that. So there's no official data. And as of for this year, we are still in the process of identifying and giving those to accountability, so accountability can test within the next few weeks. So hopefully by the summer or early fall, we'll have official data for 2020-2021.
Can I interrupt with a question?
Sure.
So although you mentioned the numbers dropping a little bit because of that drafting class, it looks like there's been an increase in students receiving that top certification of platinum. Is that can you attribute that to a certain curriculum or a certain area? Or
I know that they had changed, ACT changed the format and the different categories of the test. So that would attribute to more of the platinum. And then if you notice, it also, there was a decrease in like the silver. But Nick and Stephanie, if you want to chime in on this piece, please do so.
Yeah, I'll be happy to. They did. They
Thank you.
changed the test. They updated it. And when they did, it used to be very rare for students to earn a platinum. We were thrilled to have a platinum or 2 or 3 or 4, right? And when they changed the test, they really revamped it. It suddenly became, the platinums became more attainable. So we had a lot more platinums. But the other thing that happened was obtaining that silver became harder. So where before it was easier to get the silver and harder to get the platinum, it just, in how they changed the test and renormed it, that's how it played out across the country. And so you'll see a lot more platinums now.
Thank you, Stephanie. Okay, so this slide breaks down the previous slide just by gender and race, so you can see it demographically. These are only concentrators who earned a National Career Readiness certificate.
Okay, and I'll take it from here. So Nick Montgomery and I are the career development coordinators at Cedar Ridge and Orange High School, and we work very closely together to provide internship and apprenticeship opportunities for our students. These are the work-based learning opportunities that get the students out of our buildings and into the workplace. We have worked super hard to partner with businesses that are local for our internships. The internships are short term, usually 1 semester, and often just 1 block of 1 semester, although they can be multiple blocks within a semester, and students may do an internship multiple semesters. And these can be paid or unpaid. Most of our internships are unpaid, but we are very fortunate to have partners that pay some of our interns, such as Capital Ford, Warren Hay, Piedmont Electric, Sports Endeavors are the ones that I can think of off the top of my head, Aramark. And that's awesome that they actually get paid. But we've had internships at many different areas. We have worked super hard to provide internships in every career cluster. And when students have a career interest, we get out there and partner with businesses, the Business Advisory Council, and whoever we can to find placement for those students. And on several occasions, our students have been hired after their internship. So maybe they had an unpaid internship to start with, and then they were hired to stay on. Or maybe they had a paid internship and were hired to stay on. And Mr. Montgomery will talk about that with our career signing event slide. With our apprenticeships, these high school students start out in a pre-apprenticeship and then move into the apprenticeship after graduation. with an apprenticeship, it's goes over multiple years, 3 to 4 years. They spend half their day at the high school and half the day at the work site. As part of the apprenticeship program, the business provides courses as well as work experience. And once they graduate from high school, they're taking those courses at the community college. So they're getting paid for 40 hours a week, but they may be spending 8 hours a week in class and the other 32 hours on the job. So they're paid, their tuition is paid, their books are paid for, but they're also being paid to sit in class. So it's a wonderful opportunity for students who are graduating to go straight into the workforce while continuing their education and obtain an associate's degree. And often those companies will then have a tuition program for them to continue on with a bachelor's degree if they would like to do that as well. We have 2 consortiums nearby for apprenticeships. So NCTAP, North Carolina Triangle Apprenticeship Program, is mostly based in Wake County. The barrier there for our students is that the companies are pretty far away, the closest being RTP, so it's quite a drive. Closer by is the Career Accelerator Program in Alamance County, and 1 or 2 of those companies are actually over the line in Orange County, so those companies are certainly much closer for our students. So there's less of a transportation barrier, that time barrier of having to travel. Although with both of these work-based learning opportunities, that's the barrier for our students, transportation. And that's one barrier we are seeking help with trying to overcome for our students, because we want all students to be able to participate in an internship or an apprenticeship, not just the students who are privileged to have a car and a license. And so that's where we can really use your help in helping overcoming that barrier for our students. But these are both awesome work-based learning opportunities. And the other work-based learning opportunity is, of course, job shadowing, which is just a day or a half a day on the job to learn about what it's like to be at that job site. So we often encourage students to job shadow prior to interning, to make sure that they think that's where they want to spend the semester. And certainly before going into an apprenticeship, they go through a rigorous selection process to make sure that's what they really want to do before committing to that more long-term work-based learning experience.
Thank you, Stephanie. Mr. Montgomery, is there anything you would like to add? And I'm sorry that I was maybe making y'all sick going back between all the slides, but I wanted to show the list of apprenticeship sites, and then I kept wanting to go out of that picture because I really want to highlight that picture. So I will stop talking for a second. Mr. Montgomery, do you have anything you want to add? And if you don't say what I want you to say, I'm going to add to it. Mr. Montgomery, you are muted. Famous line.
I try to stay quiet throughout these meetings, and I apologize. I had my my mute on. Anyway, no, what I would add to that would be that in the spring of 2019, the department, Ms. Braxton, Ms. Fornes, Ms. Smith, and myself made a concerted effort to recruit businesses in the area to offer apprenticeships for our students. And I think we were able to secure one, and that was at Chapel Hill Tire. But the challenge still lies before us to partner with companies and businesses to offer apprenticeships in the area. One issue with that is that Durham Tech does not have a apprenticeship partnership type program like Wake Tech, as with NCTAP, and Alamance Community College, as with the Career Accelerator program. So Durham Tech's a little behind on that issue, and we had to work with them too, even inviting in representatives from CAP to meet with them and explain just what apprenticeships were. And so we also have to, we have an ongoing dialogue with companies about insurance for students doing internships and apprenticeships. And we constantly have to explain that there's a state insurance policy that covers students in case of an accident. So students are covered through this state insurance policy. And but we have to consistently reassure businesses when we try to reach out to them and recruit them to host internships and apprenticeships that the students will be covered. We've really, I think we've gone over and above the call of duty to try to recruit businesses to partner with us. And, you know, the response has still not been what we would like. So, of course, with some of the board members, I know Mr. Atherton has been great about recruiting some businesses or talking to businesses in the area that might hire our students, and he lets us know from time to time about businesses that are hiring. So thank you to him. But we would love for more companies, businesses, agencies in the area to host our students for apprenticeships and internships. And that would really expand our scope. And that's all I want to say on that. And Shannon, I'm not a mind reader, but I hope that might speak to a little bit about what you wanted me to talk about.
That's perfect. Thank you, Mr. Montgomery. I really appreciate it. I just really wanted to highlight this picture from May of 2019, which was the first ever signing event. It was a lot of work that went into it. And Capital Ford, the pictured in the bottom middle, have continued to partner with Orange County Schools. That was their first hire. They hired one last year during the pandemic, and we had a virtual signing. And we have an opportunity for another student this year, even in this virtual world. And so that's just really, really exciting news. And it just takes one. So we just get one, we got this going, and then we just add another. It is slow going, but we're getting there. And the key is to continue to focus on that and to focus on our goal and adding more. We have been in partnership, I'm going to say it wrong, AKG, can I have a thumbs up? Is that right? AKG. They have a youth apprenticeship program in welding. They need welders. And so we have done a tour. We have met with them. They have met with students, both at Orange and Cedar Ridge. There's opportunity, and we're just going to continue to add one at a time. Just like Mr. Montgomery said, Mr. Atherton sometimes comes up and hands me a business card for somebody to talk to that said they got a job or they want to do an internship. So any of you that come up with that information, just keep passing it along, because that's what's really important, that we add them just one at a time.
Hey, Shannon, thank you so much for this information. Just a quick question. Are we making any progress with Durham Tech with regards to nurturing more internship opportunities? We know we have a new president of Durham Tech, and he seems very eager to support the surrounding school districts. And so just wondering.
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Felder, we continue to have conversations with Durham Tech, and also with Apprenticeship NC. That is also another conversation. So we continue to have those conversations. And I feel that just like adding one business at a time, I feel like we are making strides towards getting to that point. And it's just going to continue to take advocacy and education and communication to get us to where we need to be, where we are compared to the CAP program or the NC TAP, or to become a part of one of those. So that's just continued conversation. And I'd love to continue that conversation with any of you that might want to think about how we could be thought partners to push that agenda item forward.
And one last question real quick, and that is around transportation. So we don't provide any transportation for any of our students engaged in an internship?
So the only transportation that is provided by the district is from our high schools to the Orange County campus of Durham Tech. I know last year there was one student who had an internship, and they lost their transportation. And it was at the nursing home right next to Cedar Ridge, right where the bus passed to go to the Orange County campus. So we were able to coordinate with the field trip form with that student and with that bus driver to drop that student off on interns. And it just happened to line up. And it was on the bus's route, so it wasn't any addition, but we do not offer any transportation in any other form.
So, Dr. Felder, on your point about the apprenticeship and Durham Tech, the county is investing in a significant expansion in Orange. And I think we need the opportunity to ask the county to help us as part of that expansion to include, apprenticeships. And it seems like, invest in you invest in us, and leverage the county through that discussion, because I know it is a significant expansion they're doing.
Then that's exactly what we shall do, Mr. Atherton.
And I have one other comment. As Shannon mentioned, I am shameless with companies. I will take a business card and say, I will get back to you. But, one thing that I think would help, this is just a thought as y'all were talking, is if we could get a pamphlet about apprenticeships and internships that were aimed at businesses, about the FAQs that you mentioned about insurance, because I know that question comes up every time I talk as well. And I think if we were able to, as part of that conversation with those small businesses, because there are so many in Orange County, that we could hand them that and say, well, there's two types, and they understand that an intern could be paid or unpaid, because that's a common question I get as well. And I think if we can leave them with that has the FAQs and then here contact for more, I would be more than happy to hand those out as well, but also to have those available for students or families to refer people they know, right? And it just keeps going because people know that that's available to help, because that's just one thought that came to mind as you were talking that I think would help out a lot, is just to get those FAQs and kind of details.
Thank you, Mr. Atherton. I have been writing all that down, so we'll work towards that. Thank you. I also see that our time is very close, and so I would like to just highlight one thing here and then get it to Melinda, back to her, because I want you to see some data, but the data is there for you to review at your convenience. And then if I can provide that 78 slide deck that has all the hidden slides, and you could really dive in deep with some of those data slides, that would be great. But I'd like to just highlight the Orange Engineering and Design Academy that is at Orange. I just want to highlight that program is still there. It is in its third year. The Academy has had some personnel issues. We're on our third PLTW teacher and coordinator. The Academy has had two principals and an interim principal. And so the principal and the director that established that program, that listed all the goals and outcomes, they're no longer here. And so what we are currently doing is providing some time for the two PLTW teachers at Orange, Ms. Angela Williams and Mr. Jim Janis, and the career development coordinator, Mr. Nick Montgomery. We're providing some opportunity for them in June, when school's out, for the three of them to sit down, really dive into that material and really make that program stable and to be able to thrive. So the first cohort of students that started in 2019-2020, they are current 10th graders. The second cohort that started this year, 2020-2021, are current 9th graders, and they have already had the application process and acceptance process for this third cohort of 21-22. So just wanted to give you a little update on where that program is. It's still there. We just need to get some structures and stability in place to move that program forward.
And Carrie, this is the question I keep asking about choice programs. You probably heard me mention it 4 or 5 times. Like, what's going on with this program? So thank you so much for the update on this.
Yes, because Mr. Atherton, in the original request, I think before school year 2019-2020, I read back through all the board updates, it was projected that once it was stable and once Orange High School could allow it, that they may consider it to be a choice program. We're
Right.
just not there yet. But yes, I wanted to make sure that I highlighted that for you today.
I appreciate it.
And so we are 3 minutes. Please give me your opinion. We do have quite a few slides on data, and then just a wrap up. So tell us what your direction you'd like for us to go now.
Carrie,
Will, why don't you go ahead, Will?
I was just going to say, Carrie, I would request that if they could come back, because that's a lot of good data. You know, I did do the pre-read, and I think it's very important for us to see that. And the other thing too is there's a lot of terminology that we heard today about concentrators, there's CCP and certifications and, you know, readiness certificates. And I think a discussion at the end of that, you know, as a group to just understand the context of Orange County, I would not want to rush that in 3 minutes. It wouldn't give it due diligence. And I think it is an important part of our community and our engagement with our businesses and our students. And anyway, that's just my opinion, if that's possible. I don't know if Shannon and team could come back to do that.
And just real quick, Mr. Atherton and Ms. Doyle, what we would also like to do is in a board weekly update that all board members have this information, as well as provide what Ms. Braxton and the team shared, the more in-depth version of the slide deck with all of the data. And we also have we'll have for you, if not in today's weekly, it won't be, I don't think it won't be in this weekly update, but in a future weekly update, our follow-up to the ad hoc committee report, we would like to share our follow-up to that report in a weekly update, so all board members have that information as well.
Sounds great.
So fine with that. You know, run this late if, you know, Ms. Braxton and Dr. Dawson would like to do the problem for me. And I agree that there's some really important data captured there that I'd like us to lend more focus, and we can do it a couple of ways and draw attention to it within the committee, as well as particularly the transportation needs. I know that the board will want to hear that that's really an equity issue that I want us to come back to. So, but go ahead, Ms. Braxton, and finish up to whatever sequence you would like to do it is fine with me. I'm all ears.
Well, thank you for allowing me to come back, or our team to come back. We are passionate about career technical ed. You ask us any given day, we'll be glad to come and speak to you on any topic of career technical ed, because this is who we are, and this is what we will share with you. So we'll come back with this data. You have it, and if you allow me to share that 78 slide deck, you can see all the slides that we hid. That was the background that got us to those summary slides. So we'll come back to that. And then the credentials, we can come back to that at another time. And then our last slides, summing up what we hope to cover with you today, and then a recap from previous presentations. And I saved these presentations. So a lot of times for new board members, what I need to think about is sharing those old slide decks with you, which would give you that historical data, vocabulary, terms, and just to help, again, as you mentioned, what's Perkins? So just to make sure that we are all speaking the same language. So again, thank you today for allowing us to speak. Sorry, we went right till 12 o'clock.
And just real quick, because I know it is time, I can't let this pass without giving a huge thank you to Ms. Braxton, Ms. Horns, Mr. Montgomery, Ms. Smith. It's a small but very powerful, very passionate team that is really focused on making sure that we are offering our students CTE without limits. So from all of us to our CTE team, we just want to share our gratitude and thank you so much for all your advocacy on behalf of our kids and our work. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I want to say wholeheartedly that Ms. Braxton, when you took over the program, I have seen a significant change in it, and just all the energy, and your whole team as well, bringing that every day and what it's evolved to, and just the visibility. You know, one of the things I did want to mention, because I didn't want to leave without mentioning this, was we mentioned the transportation from the high schools to, for example, Durham Tech. That isn't common in districts. That is unique to Orange County to provide that. And that is something I'm proud we're able to do, because a lot of students would not have the opportunity to even take those courses because they couldn't get from the high school to the classes and back. So that is just some of the innovation that I know this team does. So thank you. I just wanted to echo that as well, Dr. Dawson.
I want to say thank you also, and this is a really significant program in our schools, just really important offerings for our high school students. I'm so glad it's here, and it is a lot to understand. I apologize for still being at the beginning of my understanding, but I have been watching as I've had Orange High students myself, and so I'm just pleased to learn more, and I'm so appreciative of all that you're doing, and definitely welcome another visit for more presentations, as well as we'll encourage our fellow board members to review what you've already shared. Does anyone have any closing comments?
Just thank you and tell us when you want us to come back and we'll be there.
Okay.
So motion to adjourn?
Okay, I second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your Friday.
Aye.